you. Welcome back to the You-tilize, the podcast where we make the human experience a little lighter, a little brighter, and most importantly, a little more joyful. Today we're diving into something we'll all face at one point or another, the feeling of being stuck. Whether it's in a job, a relationship, a mindset, a routine, or even a way of life, we sometimes find ourselves staying in places that no longer serve us. Staying stuck can weigh us down and keep us from the joy and passion we are meant to experience. But why? Why do we stay stuck when we know deep down we need to move on? And how do we finally break free? Well, this episode is all about exploring the reasons we stay stuck, the stories we tell ourselves, and how to transform those stories into movement, joy, and freedom. This episode is about recognizing when it's time to move on, letting go of false perceptions, and rediscovering the beauty of choosing the real you. So grab your coffee, tea, or just a comfortable seat and let's dive in. Let's start with the big question. How long is too long? It's tricky because there is no universal timeline. The answer isn't the same for everyone. For some, it's days, for others, it's years. But the real issue isn't time, it's what's keeping us there. Maybe you've been in a relationship or job that felt wrong from day one, but you stayed anyway well, because change is hard. Or so the belief of change you created in your mind. We human becomings have the habit of creating wrong beliefs at every moment. So all these perceptions can build the story of change is hard. Or maybe you stay where you feel stuck because you told yourself things would get better, or that you owed it to someone, or even to yourself, to keep trying, which realistically is being somehow inauthentic and untrue to yourself, consciously or subconsciously. But one thing is absolutely true. Whatever relevant story of reality you build in yourself, it keeps you comfortable and safe. And here's the thing, the longer you stay stuck, the more it feels normal. It becomes a comfortable discomfort. And that's the most dangerous place to be. When we settle into stuckness, we stop asking ourselves the most important question. Is this where I truly want to be? This brings me to a guiding principle I use. If it's not 100% yes, it's 100% no. And recently, I was out with a friend who told me that since I shared this principle with him, his dating life changed completely because he felt more powerful since he started listening better to himself and choose wisely. So let's unpack. If it's not 100% yes, it's 100% no. This might sound harsh, but think about it. How often do we compromise our gut feelings with half-hearted maybes? Whether it's a decision about staying in a relationship, taking a new job, or even how we spend our time, we let kind of hold us hostage. Imagine asking yourself, do I truly want to stay here, to do this, or be with this person? Am I really ready to tolerate this behavior in the long run? And if your answer isn't an enthusiastic and wholehearted yes, then deep down you already know the answer. It's a no. And the challenge isn't the answer, it's what comes next. And what usually comes next is hope. That idea of hope. Hope is a double-edged sword. It's powerful, beautiful, and necessary, but it can also keep us stuck. We hope things will change, that circumstances will improve, that this person will get more honest, that the job will become more fulfilling, that people will finally meet our expectations, that we will wake up one day and everything will magically fall into place. Here is the reality. Hope without action is just wishful thinking. It's just a comfortable cage. It keeps us tied to a future that may never come, to a fantasy instead of grounding us in the reality of what is. The question isn't, do I have hope? It's, am I using hope as a tool for growth or as an excuse to avoid change? If you're staying in a situation because of hope, ask yourself, am I hoping for something that aligns with reality, or am I clinging into a fantasy? And speaking of fantasy, let's talk about another reason we stay stuck: false perceptions of reality. Sometimes the reason we stay stuck isn't the situation itself, it's how we see it. We convince ourselves of things that aren't true, like, this is just how life is, or I cannot have a better relationship, or I'll never find another person like them, or no one else would hire me. And these aren't facts. They're fears disguised as truths. Recognizing these delusions is the first step towards breaking free. Reality isn't fixed. It's fluid, and so we are. These false perceptions create a reality that feels unchangeable, even though it's entirely built on fear and absorbed wrong beliefs. Breaking free starts with challenging those stories. What if you're not trapped? What if you're given an opportunity to act upon what you want? What if the world is bigger than the version you've convinced yourself to believe in? But breaking free requires something else too: the willingness to embrace change. Which leads us to the big scary question: what is change really? Change isn't just about doing something different, it's about becoming someone different. It's letting go of old patterns, stories, and even parts of yourself that no longer serve you. But here's the catch: change often feels like a loss or a sacrifice somehow, and that's why we resist it. It is scary. Ask yourself, what am I afraid to lose? Sometimes the answer isn't the job, the relationship, or the habit. It's the version of yourself that's tied to them. Change forces us to confront the fact that we're constantly evolving, and that can be both terrifying and liberating. And yet, even as we embrace change, we have to wrestle with the stories we tell ourselves. What I call false perceptions of reality, and how to move on to another state. Which brings us to one of the hardest parts of moving on, and it's letting go. So, people in my life know how much I love my spiritual world and how much time I spend on meditation and working on myself. Recently, I went through a rough journey of a breakup where so much disappointment and resentment were involved. I had to realistically face the reality of the fantasy I have created for myself by clinging on hopes. And I had to face the fact how much I idealized a type of a relationship that I would never choose in any other circumstances due to value misalignments and disrespect. I had to battle the beliefs I have absorbed throughout my past and during this relationship for me to let go and move on. So, coming to the topic of letting go, I have to compare this to forgiveness. Letting go isn't the same as forgiving. Letting go is about releasing the weight of what's holding you back. But don't mistake it for getting rid of, as so many do, and it may not work for you. Letting go is really about releasing. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is about making peace with the choices you made in the past. And guess what? You don't need someone else's apology or to forgive them, as well as you don't need to forgive someone else to let go. Indeed, what worked for me is not even forgiving the person's behavior and actions. It's not about them. It's never been. It's about what I was holding on to and who I was holding it for. But here's the key. If you feel you want to forgive parts of them, maybe forgive their soul for choosing such a challenging way that prompted you to realize the stuckness you're in, the need to move your butt towards growing and expanding, and thank their soul for all the lessons you've learned. You are a changed person now, and you wouldn't know hadn't gone through this path. So, forgiveness is all about being at peace with yourself and all lessons you've learned. And letting go is all about releasing the people, beliefs, and circumstances that held you back from change. And once you start letting go, you can finally make the most important decision of all, to choose yourself. Which brings us to closure, or the lack of it. Sometimes the only closure we get is the one we create for ourselves. But is closure even real? How many times have you told yourself you need closure to move on? We think closure is about getting answers, an apology, or some magical final chapter that makes everything make sense. And since this is a podcast where I authentically share my thoughts and opinions, I don't believe in closures. I see closure as a type of an excuse, rather avoiding the fact that a responsibility hasn't been taken when it had to. And this is the flashing exit sign for clearing conscience and calming the ego, right? To feel good about yourself, knowingly you weren't good at all, or using the excuse out of respect to the past. Well, if the past was so great, why do you need a closure? You leave the door open, right? But if respect and other values haven't been honored in the past, how can a closure make sense? Feel free to comment below and share your thoughts, as this is a topic that somehow it's pointless to me, but extremely interested to hear what you think. To me, Closure isn't always real. Sometimes the door isn't just closed. It never existed maybe in the first place. Or the doors and walls are smashed to pieces, so there's nothing to close behind. Have you thought about it? Closure isn't about getting answers from someone else. It's about deciding you're ready to move forward without them. This contract is completed now. It ended. Closure isn't about what someone else gives you. It's about what you give yourself. It's saying, I don't need all the answers to move forward. That's where freedom begins. And moving forward and freedom start with finding peace. Peace is tricky because it's it's not the absence of conflict, it's the presence of acceptance. The dilemma is this: we often equate peace with giving up, but peace isn't giving up. It's letting go of the need to control outcomes. Being at peace is to accept that you're a sum of your values that are pushing you to walk the path you're intended to walk, with or without the circumstances that appeared and challenged you in your life. Peace is the acceptance of self truly and authentically. Peace is to look in the mirror and being able to say, I learned and I expanded. I effing love myself for holding on to who I am, for finding strength to take this step towards uncertainty. That is actually the excitement of life, by the way. Peace is the gift. If you're able to recognize it in the box that's not wrapped to your liking, of course. Peace is when you don't seek for answers externally to feel safer. It is to know you are safe no matter what. So ask yourself, can I be at peace with not having all the answers? Because that's where true freedom begins. And freedom is where choice and the decisions come in. Choice and decisions are two sides of the same coin, yet very different in nature. A choice is the definition of dedication. It's an acknowledgement. A decision is the commitment for the action. For example, I choose to feel joyful today, and my decision is to go out and find the most beautiful coffee place and read my book that gives me joy. The choice is the theoretical sister of the decision, that's the physical expression of the choice. And at some point, we inevitably have to stop circling around choices and make a decision. And why? Because decisions create momentum, and momentum creates freedom. Because staying stuck is a decision too. It's a decision to not choose. But here's the shift. When you decide to let go, you're not just moving on. You're making room for joy, passion, and purpose. And when you decide, you don't just move on, you start dancing. Moving on isn't just about leaving something behind. It's about stepping into something new. The new chapter that you know nothing about. How exciting! And here's the secret. It doesn't have to be perfect. Moving on can be messy, awkward, and uncertain, kind of like learning to dance. You can't stay frozen in place and call it movement. You have to let go of your fear of stepping on toes or looking silly and just let yourself flow. And the beauty is in the movement itself. You're not stuck anymore. You're flowing, growing, and finding your rhythm. And with every step, you're falling in love, not with an outcome, but with the process. And when you do, you find something magical, the joy. Joy isn't the absence of struggle, it's the presence of passion and purpose. It's what happens when you fall in love with the process of becoming. Joy often feels out of reach when we're stuck. But why? Because being stuck is heavy. It's filled with overthinking, self doubt, and resistance. It's like trying to see the sun through a thick fog. You know it's there, but you can't quite feel its warmth. But here's the beautiful part. The act of moving on, no matter how small the step, begins to clear that fog. Joy isn't waiting for you at the end of the journey. It's something you uncover along the way. Every decision to release the old creates space for something lighter, brighter, and more aligned with who you are becoming. Moving on is an act of reclaiming your joy. It's saying, I deserve to feel good. I deserve to feel free. Now, let's be real. Moving on isn't always joyful at first. It can feel very uncomfortable, scary, even painful. But joy is the quiet thread that runs through the process. It's in the small moments when you realize you're no longer tied to what was, when you take a deep breath and feel lighter, when you notice that first spark of excitement about what's ahead. Joy starts small. It might be choosing to dance in your kitchen after a long day, or journaling about what excites you, or taking a walk, or taking your dog on a walk, and noticing how beautiful the world can be. These small acts of joy remind you that life is still full of color and possibility, even in the midst of change. As you move into a new chapter, joy becomes your guide. Is the thing that nudges you forward, that helps you say yes to what feels right and no to what doesn't. It's the spark that reignites your passion and creativity. Imagine looking back at this moment 6 months or a year from now. You'll see it not as a time of a loss or uncertainty, but as the moment you chose to start living for yourself. The joy you feel in your new chapter won't just be about what you've gained, it will be about who you've become in the process. Now, coming towards the end of this podcast, here's my challenge to you. What's one thing you're staying stuck with? And what would happen if you let it go? Staying stuck is a decision, but so is joy. And when you choose and decide to move, to let go, to embrace the messy dance of life, you'll find yourself falling in love with passion, with freedom, and most importantly, with you. If you want, you can make a new agreement with yourself today. Just write down the choices you made that make you feel stuck today. What are the new choices and decisions that you can make to change this reality for yourself? And now think of how you can make this process as joyful as possible. What is it that you can do to make you feel good about the choices and decisions you made? Here's what I want you to take away today. Being stuck is part of the journey, but being free can be one choice away from you. When you choose to let go, to embrace change, and to move forward with clarity, you make space for joy and passion to enter your life. So, what's one thing you can let go of today? What's one step you can take toward joy? Because you deserve to fall in love with your life. And that starts right now. Until next time, keep showing up for yourself. Goodbye, you.